I beat Spider-Man 2 without taking a single hit of damage. If I took even part of 1 HP, which is possible, I have to restart to the last checkpoint, and I did this on ultimate mode, the hardest difficulty. My first fight with Sandman's goons was already showing me how hard this was, because whenever I tried to land a combo on an enemy, I would get hit, not noticing this little spidey sense thing. I thought that after dodging a lot, the game would give me time for a combo, but nah, straight into whatever this is, bro. I had to adjust here into aerial combat. Throughout this challenge, it would become very clutch. The rest of this intro wasn't that hard, aside from when Sandman hit me with this. Once I started fighting criminals, I was facing the troubles of guns. And as I moved into this boat section, the game took a dark turn. My main strategy was to keep Spider-Man moving at all times, and dodge when I needed to. This could work well for some time, but I could only keep gadgets and ability cycling for so long. The only way I could consistently deal damage was by constantly switching between enemies, and I would usually need an ability or finisher just to get the kill. The worst enemies though were by far these gunmen. Even when I tried to get one, something like this would always happen. Overall though, the thing that made this fight torture was just not being able to finish a combo. What allowed me to eventually win was pulling enemies into a discreet spot and webbing them down to the ground. I had to save a few people from inside the boat, but I had another fight on top. Now I can't lie, a lot of these deaths were my fault, but stuff like this was just wild to me. I didn't even notice I took damage for a second here. Oh, I took damage. I'm at 93 HP. Now the whole shape of the boat is what had me messing up here. Like, what type of combo even is this? Even combos that went crazy would be ruined. Like, this man faked me out with that little bullet. The fight just taught me how to use the environment to my advantage. Even if it was bad, if you found just one thing to exploit, the fight was possible. Speaking of exploits though, like, what is this, bro? The devs can make 19 bullets tracking the hypotenuse of Spider-Man's left eyebrow, but can't at the ground. My next objective was to track down Kraven's base, and this little fight leading up to it showed me just how much I hate birds. They had no right to be more powerful than me. I'm still trying to figure out why they spin around instead of just flying into me. Once I was in the actual base though, I faced the first fight that I would need to be an actual menace for. I started out fine, getting some standard stealth kills and finishers off, but once I entered this room, something awakened in me. At first, I went with the stealth strat, but it didn't take too long to realize that this would not work. I dove straight into combat, and at first I thought it would be easy until they called up the reinforcements, and none of my ideas worked, so I revisited the stealth strat and pulled through with the most incredible fight of the century.
Stop the cap.
The next room introduced these dogs, and they could straight up disable my abilities. My method here was a little unique. I was trying to be safe, but this was a disgrace to the challenge. I don't even know what I was thinking here. Next up was the Black Cat mission, and this one annoys me for two reasons. First of all is this goofy ass puzzle, but second is the fact that she can throw me into Antarctica all fine, but can't teleport to Paris because it's too far. The fight though was fine with these portals. My next stop was the Carnival, and this is where I fully regretted starting this challenge. I had to do it twice too because I lost the first recording. Trust me though, it was just as hard the second time. Remember back in the intro when I mentioned taking partial damage to a single hit point? Yeah, this fire was a menace.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
The first part consisted of about 900 gunmen scattered around, camping, and waiting for the 1 millisecond I wasn't dodging to shoot. But this was not the hard part, because this section is where the light pillars show up. There was always someone with a gun on all 4 of these, along with the normal ground enemies. Even if I took out all 4, they would just keep coming back. So it ended up with me recycling crazy moves like this until every enemy was out. This didn't happen deathless though. I of course had to fight some ground enemies, as not everyone had a gun. But when I did this, it left me open to attacks like this. This enemy grapple function is what carried this whole section. It really helped me avoid tense moments like this. And with enough time, I won. And after finding out about Harry's powers, my next stop was Kraven's base to rescue Tombstone, who was captured during the fight. At first, it was just me soloing some enemies, and with everything I learned from the last fight, it was pretty easy, ain't even gonna cap. Next up though, was just some simple stealth, until Harry joined us up. It got real here, I can't lie. I was going crazy though. My dodging was on point. Like, look at this man, straight into the combo. But I have a little confession. These birds did not stop violating, but honestly, we got my boy out pretty fast. But I didn't know that soon enough the challenge would get a lot harder. So Kraven had turned Mr. Connors into Lizard, and we needed to stop this. So after a little MJ mission and small fight, Peter now had the Symbiote. I decided here that because we were nearing the first few boss fights of the game, I should upgrade a little bit first. Now for the people who don't understand, we do not need to upgrade HP, so I'll put everything into attack. In order to do this though, I tried my hand at a few hunter blinds. These were easy with aerial combat, but then they used a certain strategy that I call blitzing ultimate lethal lightning strike hyper intense takedown. Gotta thank ChatGPT for that one, but there's no swearing on this channel.
See, now that's some bullshit.
Now my next stop was at this mini boss, looking for some info on Kraven, and they brought that attack out with this tank right here. Aside from this though, it was easy, and I was on to the restaurant mission. This symbiote had Peter dripped out for this, I cannot lie. It didn't last long though, cause this fight was hard. I thought I was cooking at the beginning, but I had my ult, and as soon as that ran out, I was not doing good. I just didn't understand some of these attacks.
What?
Like I mentioned before, my main strategy was trying to make the whole fight an endless combo, but here it was inevitable that you would just completely ignore an attack and ruin your whole run. The beginning honestly was not the worst part. Even though it had the most enemies, the chaos made it easy for me to dodge under an enemy, or rush up on one like this and avoid whatever's coming towards me. The point is, all my escapes were gone at the end, and I couldn't finish a single string of attacks here.
What the dog doing?
It was also much harder to get my abilities back, so my endless combo strat did not work. By far though, the worst part of this fight was the return of this. It made aerial combat impossible, and death inevitable. After enough time, I beat this just like any other fight though, and approached my first boss, and this, it was a rude awakening. Even though it was just a mini boss, it made everything I had done before look easy. I could parry one of his attacks with good accuracy, but to me, any of the others meant certain death. And for the first 10 minutes, it was just a slaughter, until I developed my main strategy, and I realized that if I threw an object at him, I could reset his position back to default, which would force him to use the same easy to parry attack every time. But of course, I still needed to deal damage, so I used 4 attacks and then an ability right after, which would parry him, because when using an ability, it's the same button as parry. Or it would just interrupt his combo, letting me land some more hits. But later into the fight, I would run out of abilities, which made this later part a bit harder, but I could still get through with some practice. That's until about halfway through. He brought out a lot of enemies here, so my previous strat was impossible to maintain. My solution was to pull each enemy up here, get the kill, and slowly do this, one by one, until it was just him. It worked for some time, but was constantly interrupted by my least favorite attack in the game. Yup, it was back, and more inconvenient than ever. I made a small change in my strategy. I would still be in the air, but not go overboard, to avoid this. And my goal wasn't even to take out these enemies. All I needed was my ult, and after enough attempts, I finally got it, which meant game over for this man right here. I was able to get the lizard antidote from Kraven, and after putting it into the particle accelerator, we were invaded by some hunters. It was hard for a while, but I got through it using the same strats I'd used before. The real problem here though was the mini boss, I was just bad. But unlike the last fight, there was no insane strategy I made. All I did was parry the attacks I could, dodge if I needed to, and use my abilities if I had to. All it took was some practice honestly, but the one thing I did do was take advantage of these corners and throwable items, which would let me get pretty big chunks of damage off.
Stop the cap.
I was going crazy here until I got killed from an attack that I mistakenly tried to parry. And this fight taught me 2 harsh realities about the bosses in this challenge. So one is that you just can't parry. Look, it's a great strategy for a normal playthrough, but no matter how good I got, I would eventually miss the timing on an attack. It takes longer for sure, but I was better off learning the natural openings to attacks rather than trying to perfect my timing on every boss. It still wasn't completely useless of course. There's some attacks and situations where parrying just makes the most sense, but for the majority of the fight, it just wasn't worth it. The second lesson was a lot more minor, but I learned that rationing abilities is crucial. Natural attack openings were pretty rare if you weren't parrying, but abilities could stun enemies enough to land a combo. Even if I may not be able to use as many abilities in one fight because I'm waiting to use them, it'll let me land a lot of attacks consistently throughout the fight, which ultimately would add up to a lot more. I didn't grasp either of these ideas immediately, but here's what happened when I did not apply them.
Oh my god, bro.
Now I originally blamed it on luck, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't winning the lottery here. The only reason I died here was because of not having any abilities left and trying to parry something that I didn't have to. It was completely my fault, and I was lucky I was able to even get here in the first place. Pretty quickly after this, I got my ult, and this boss didn't have that much total HP, so I was able to spam abilities for a while and then finishing them up with my ult. So I really didn't have to last long fighting normally, but this would change on the real bosses. I was on the search for Lizard, and after fighting some enemies at his house and doing this little boat mission, I knew the Lizard fight was next. I needed to prepare, so I did part of the Bebop side quest as Miles, and was able to get my damage to level 4 as I entered the first true boss fight of this challenge. And let me just say now, Lizard was infinitely harder than anything so far. Also, the first and second phase are basically the same, so I'm just gonna act like they are. Now to start, he was going crazy with these crush attacks, and you can't parry them. That doesn't really matter though, but they're just hard to dodge if you're already close up. And he could randomly start being insanely aggressive for no reason at all. He would just start going crazy. Honestly, looking back at it, my biggest mistake was not taking enough risks. I'd only attack after using an ability, gadget, or stunning him with one of these things. After a lot of time practicing, I had the beginning of the fight entirely planned out before I even started. To start, I'll dodge this crush attack and use 2 abilities, getting as much damage in between these steps as I could. This would be enough to get him to jump on the wall, or I could web him up and get some more damage. This left my plan stage done, and back to freestyle in the fight. Ideally from here, I'll be able to use my ult abilities in these vents to get him to jump on the wall again, getting the kill. But of course, mistakes were bound to be made. In this instance, I was on the most majestic run of my life until I got hit with this. But there is a more important lesson to be learned from here. I can't dodge unless I need to. Now you may be thinking, what's the problem with some extra dodging? Well, right here, I was stuck in the previous dodge, but didn't have the invincibility frames. In other words, it was too early to dodge again, but too late for the previous dodge to be in effect. But I had learned my lesson, got to the same spot, and played it cleanly enough to get the win. I still had one more phase though. The only way I can describe phase 2 is just phase 1, but harder. I can't lie though, within 5 minutes, I already had some crazy runs going. But of course, my luck was gone from here, and I spent the rest of the night trying with no progress. And what I blame the most for that was this attack. I'm just saying, there's a pattern here. Every death was due to this attack. It was random, unpredictable, and impossible to dodge on time. But still, no challenge can be defined by a single attack, which is where the basics came in. There were more of them, and they're harder to dodge, turning my once solved dodging problem into a whole new curse. Just like the first phase, I planned the beginning out. It was the exact same strat for a minute, but right when I would normally let him jump up in the first phase, I kept going crazy in the second. I had the whole first half meticulously perfected. Overall, I would stay far away in case of crush attacks, and then land a few combos before I opened the vent and got some more damage in. The last step was using my ult, getting him to about half HP before I let him jump up. Now I was back into the normal fight, and here I was hunting for the perfect run. It entirely relied on my ability to dodge and take the short attacking opportunities I had. I could still use abilities, but I usually wouldn't get any. One of my biggest problems though was missing these vents, which could easily ruin a run. He also jumped up on the wall a lot more in this phase, and I can't lie, I took many L's to this thing. Once I found a good balance between staying out of this man's sight and being in range to land a punch, I knew I could win. And after saving up some heat for the last combo, I was done with this wretched boss. Peter wanted to keep the suit, which I get, but he didn't even have to start terrorizing the city and make me play as MJ. I thought I had it under control as Miles, but I cannot lie, these hunters are always hard. They even brought this back. Honestly though, the disrespect they showed me had me flabbergasted. I just pulled through my ult, and within negative 12 milliseconds, this dude's already shooting at me. I just had to kind of keep the flow of the fight running throughout here, and I was good. I can't say the same about the second part here though. These hunters had no right to be going crazy on me. Now look, the main peculiar situation I encountered is this unusual exchange of prehensile appendages with these gunmen. Typically in one of these fights, you may have to take the gunman out first to avoid getting hit while melee fighting, and that's completely fair. But there are lots of gunmen over here. I couldn't even target them without getting shot. I genuinely tried every solution, but the second I would try to get one gunman, another would shoot me. Eventually though, I found a strat. I'll take out the lower level gunman first, and then some plane enemies, making sure I do all of this close to the wall, so these menaces cannot shoot me. From here, I could just take out the rest of the gunmen if I stayed moving constantly and use my finisher. After this, it was just some plane enemies until I reached this man right here. Now this was not my first encounter with someone like this, but that does not mean it was easy. Look, the strat was to web him up, attack, and then run away until my webs were back. I ain't even gonna say this was a mistake. Do you really think I'm about to legitimately fight this man when I got the whole run on the line? No, but the death was tragic, because I know I wasn't holding that joystick forward. But this meant that I had to go through the same pain again. I'm gonna stop talking about this now though, since we got something big coming up. So Kraven had captured Miles, and I was in the hideout trying to escape. Now everything was pretty standard, until I met the hardest enemy yet. This gas was crazy, and I had to take damage here. It wasn't even a choice though. There wasn't much else here aside from another one of these, so approaching the negative man fight, I had all these hunters hyping me up, but I didn't even know I would need a lot more than hype to win this fight. Let me start out by saying that this man had no patterns in terms of you attacking him. Sometimes I could go crazy for 20 hits. Sometimes I would get him in the air, and after 2 hits, he would teleport back down. These attacks he let off too were impossible. Unpredictable ranged projectiles and fast sword hits. The only way I can describe this is like fighting a mosquito. The delay on these attacks was weird too, making this whole fight overall impossible to learn. There's one thing I have not mentioned yet though. Spikes. They would last through the whole fight, and they ruined more good runs than Negative Man himself. Now I was midway through a combo, I might bump into one and take 5 damage. Negligible in any other run, but fatal here. They were the dumbest things ruining my best runs. The only solution was to carefully position him before my combos, which is hard to do, or you just can't attack nearly as much. I kinda did a mix of both, but the pain never left. You could never truly escape the spikes. Even here, I made sure not to attack into them. When I tried to dodge Negative Man, I jumped straight into them. This genuinely made me want to give up the challenge more than anything else. Overall, his attacks were hard to dodge, but I wouldn't say that they were the worst part of the fight, mostly just the unpredictability. I never knew when he was about to hit me with his triple dash or this little hurdle, and my main strategy for this was to jump dodge. By default, you need to jump dodge some attacks, but if you want, you can use it for everything. It would make it easier to dodge whatever the next attack was, which is crucial. This took a while to learn and adjust to, but once I did, I was going crazy. My one other discovery was aerial combat. This would help me with everything and let me land more hits overall. I don't want to understate how much much time this phase took, but listen closely. This phase brought me pain that I would only feel twice in this challenge. Now to start, you've got to beat this phase with the tornadoes and stuff. I ain't gonna say it was hard, but it was definitely pretty time consuming. And trust me, once you've been doing the same fight for this long, you might actually die to this part. The differences in this phase aren't crazy, but still enough to make it a lot longer. First up, he's just really aggressive. I swear he won't top off you for a millisecond. In the first phase, he might have done that little wind up to the attack, but no sir, none of that here. He also added the overhead attack, which is pretty hard to dodge, but overall not a big deal. I started putting time into this and got one run incredibly close. I knew I could do it if I just didn't get so nervous, and soon enough I had the run. I ended up dying partway through the next phase, I guess, except it was not the next phase at all. I don't mean the fight was done, I mean this was only half the phase. Realizing this was a tragic moment. I was genuinely speechless. My happiness and hope for this challenge was shattered in an instant, and so I ended for the day. The next day, I was ready. I beat that first phase and was going crazy on the second until this. Unfortunately, another run like this would not be coming soon. But man, I locked in for an hour and a half, ready to win this fight. Let me just speed run you the strat real quick. Alright, so you do this part, attack, making sure I'm at the right angle and not about to hit some spikes. Then use abilities, attack by going invisible, using webs, anything that can get me a hit in. Once I'm in the next phase, I'll go crazy with the same strat. Only changes are that I'm using my ult and tripling my heart rate. This should have had the fight done, and man, it took a while, but we did it. I didn't even believe my eyes after this, but I just acquired the greatest achievement of my life. Third phase was kind of a joke. I ain't even gonna lie though, it took me like 45 minutes. The only hard part was these little bubbles hitting me. If I died, it took way too long to get back to this part. I solved it with some aerial combat though, and was finally done with this. Now, I had the Kraven and Peter fight right in front of me, so I needed to prepare. Honestly though, all I did was upgrade my attack stat. Now, I headed to Kraven's base, and after just a few enemies, I was in the fight. First phase, it was pretty easy, compared to Negative Man at least. The only attack I would die a lot to was this bomb one. It didn't take long for me to win, and advance to the second and final phase. Alright, listen, this was the worst part of the challenge. I can genuinely say it is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Alright, so for a while, I would take the aggressive strat. Honestly, I had some really good runs with this, but over time, it became clear that it wouldn't be possible to win fighting mindlessly like this. I didn't learn things like parrying or attack openings here, but I did learn the best way to stun lock him, and I went crazy with my dodging game. Alright, so once I locked in, I faced a lot of problems, so let me just give you the rundown of the important attacks. This leading punch one, I would always parry, and proceed it with a combo. This triple attack, I would try to parry because at the end, you could land a nasty combo. I did die pretty often though. This spear attack was deadly, because I could never land the parry, and you would be able to ring the spell after it. Oh, I didn't even mention that yet, did I? Man, this spell immobilized you until you webbed it up. Kraven would use it at the very beginning, where it's fine, but the rest of the times he used it were death sentences. I could barely move, and I still had to be shooting webs, which always end up auto-targeting Kraven, and he's still trying to attack me. Also, if I take too long trying to web it up, I also die automatically. So yeah, this spear attack sucked. This gun attack, I got a crazy strat for. I could never land it dodging, but one time, the attack didn't hit me. I didn't even dodge either, and that's when I realized that I could hide behind trees. This bomb one was actually kinda easy, as long as you know not to dodge. I feel like everyone be forgetting how fast Spider-Man can actually run in this game. So at this skill level, I was able to get his first dog phase, assuming I had my ult. Even got a few good runs, but one single barrier kept me from winning. Getting nervous, and the dog phases. I could be on the most majestic run of all time, but get nervous and make a dumb mistake, like dodging instead of parrying, or staying in the air for too long. I would kill incredible runs, destroying my hope time and time again. So I decided that if I can't beat it at my current skill level, for whatever reason, then I have to master the phase, no matter the time investment it would need. So I started up. I learned to parry these fist attacks, and decided to dodge the first two of this combo and parry the third for the same result. I also learned how to dodge these bullets in case I couldn't find a tree, which isn't unlikely honestly. The final change I made was using my ult later at the end of the fight, when I'll be most stressed and have the highest chance of making a mistake. So from here, it was just practice, lots of practice, and after some tragic runs, this happened. I did it! 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 I know you guys just saw that number, and I can't lie, I do not recommend trying this challenge, but unfortunately, there was no break yet. I had 3 more phases of fighting Peter ahead of me. I started it, and I cannot even begin to explain how much satisfaction I got from hitting Peter with the bell. To be honest though, first phase was easy. He didn't have much HP in the first phase, and if you used your ult and the bell, you could deal a lot of free damage. I had this run here too, but I wasn't even mad. I only had one attack to parry, and his attacks were pretty predictable. Either way though, I was on to the second phase. I won't even speak on this one. It was just a harder version of the first phase. I went into the third phase ready for another easy win, but I was dead wrong. They gave him a bigger comeback than LeBron's hairline. It was just his symbiote powers going crazy, along with his normal attacks being harder. But it also felt like my combos were shorter too. I was just disappointed. Thought I finally had an easy fight. Looking back on it though, the main problem was his never-ending combos and unpredictable attacks. It took me a while, but once I got these attacks down, I had the win. Now, after about 16 hours of almost back-to-back boss fights, I had a break, but still had the final boss in front of me. For now though, I got to play as Harry and go crazy with Venom. Alright, so fighting these normal enemies was easy. The parry time constraint was basically non-existent, and I didn't even have to worry about dodging. Unfortunately though, I had to take mandatory damage in this bullet section. I would get hit before I could even move, so I just couldn't count this. But once I was in the full city, I was pretty quickly greeted by the Kraven fight 2.0, and this may have genuinely been the easiest thing I've ever done. Like, what do you think he was doing here? I'll cook this man up and serve him on a silver platter. I guess he also died here too. He deserves it for all the pain he put me through though. So by this point, Venom had the whole world turned into symbiotes. So after trying to cool down the situation for a minute by doing things like this little mini game type thing, I was faced with the MJ fight. Honestly, I was worried about this fight more than Venom's, mostly because of how much parrying there is to do. But I did know that would either be really easy or incredibly hard, depending on whether or not I could get away with dodging. And I was right. First phase was hella easy. I could dodge everything, and her health bar was surprisingly small, so the fight didn't even last long. I still have 3 more phases to go though, and it definitely gets harder. Second phase wasn't that bad either though. My main strat here was to just stay in the air with my abilities and these stun things. No need to learn her attack openings. This phase did have some hard aspects though, like she started getting a lot more aggressive, and these bullets felt a lot harder to dodge. Third phase was the same exact thing though, so let's just move on to fourth. So here, she was a lot more powerful, but the main problem was his health bar. I couldn't just rely on my abilities and these stuns to win. I also wasn't about to learn to parry though, so I was stuck trying to learn the attack patterns of my openings. This took me some time, but after developing a strat where I optimized my combos with the stuns, it wasn't bad. I finally got to this section where I teamed up with Negative Man. It's pretty easy, but also lets Peter get his symbiote back. I do get this new ability from Miles though, and it has some nasty combos attached to it. So from here, I knew the Venom fight was rapidly getting closer, so I did a little preparation by upgrading my attack. It was easy until I reached these symbiote nests. I had to do 2, and I swear I was cursed with these or some. I would get to the last few seconds and still fail. I got hit here with 4 seconds left. It's crazy. On this next one, I didn't have any runs that tragic, but a lot of consistent 30-second ones that would die. I ended up pulling through with the most cowardly strat of my life. I knew they didn't have enough time to destroy it, so I just needed to survive here. After this, I was at the finale of the game, and my first objective was this MJ thing. It was pretty easy compared to how I remember it from my first playthrough, but I died a few times to the boss, and I know she does not have a health bar, but I consider this as damage. And now it was truly happening. The Venom fight, and he was much worse than I could remember. To start out, I could not parry him. I know I always say this and then end up being able to parry a few attacks, but not this time. These were way too crazy. In this first phase, I mainly died to 3 different attacks. First up was his X formation smash or whatever. I could usually jump dodge his attacks, but this one had some crazy vertical range. Second up was his grab. It was bad in this phase for a while, but later it would be crucial for the win. Final one was his smash. That just happened really fast and was hard to dodge. My main improvement in the phase was obviously dodging, but I also realized that I needed to hold left or right on the joystick at all times, because dodging forward never ends well. Honestly though, this was the easiest phase, and I was able to win in like an hour. Second phase though is where it got wild. He came in with these symbiotes going crazy. I could win this part, but it was pretty inconsistent. It might take 20 minutes to reach the normal fight even once, and when I did, I might be wrong, but it did seem harder than the first phase. The main problem with this though is that you can't attack. We got 1,000 symbiotes dodging at light speed, always ready to pull up on you from those stupid ass places. I could use this card to make it a little easier, but I wanted to save all these stuns for the real fight. I was stuck here for a while though, until I came up with the craziest strat of all time. Hear me out. If I went up here and sat down for a while, Venom couldn't do anything about it. I could still web these things up though, and use my abilities to beat the mini phase. And trust me, I better not see any comments saying this is a cheese, cause it's not. I don't deal any damage or even stop him from attacking me. I think he was just being nice, honestly. This left me with the equivalent of half the first phase left, until I had another one of these phases, got the win, leaving me with one more boss. Alright, so now I was on to the true finale of the game, Miles versus Venom. I was hoping that because I already had a good understanding of Venom's attacks, that this would be easy. Unfortunately though, I was very mistaken. So for this first part, it's hard for two reasons. First up, he was unpredictable. I know I say that about every boss, but I genuinely had no way of knowing if he'll just smack, punch me, or even use his attack during my combo. Second reason is his attack. I just couldn't dodge it. If I used some abilities and gadgets throughout the phase, I could usually stun him enough, bringing me to the second part. Once he was on the ground, it felt a lot more familiar, but this battlefield made it a lot harder. So my main strat before was staying above him, letting me dodge attacks a lot more freely, but that was almost impossible now. So what I had to do was learn his attack patterns. Alright, so this combo would always be right before a grab, in which it didn't matter if I dodged. The grab itself doesn't deal damage, and the other attack is easy to dodge, always leaving time for me to attack. So with all this engraved in my brain, all I had to do was execute. Honestly though, this wasn't horribly bad. The HP was not crazy, and once I knew how to dodge everything, I had it under control. That's until I found out about this thing. Happened twice. Look man, I was flabbergasted, and at the same time, nervous as hell. But I thought I could do it. Unfortunately though, not with this thing in my way. I could get past all the other changes, like more projectiles, but this attack had me dead every time. I decided to save my ult for this part. Hopefully dealing enough to give me an easy phase. It made the first phase a lot harder, but I got used to it. But and the ult did not do much. I would still get hit by this, and I was always too scared to go in for a combo over 2 hits, cause I don't know if he was about to hit me with some random undodgeable attack. But pretty quickly, I knew what I had to do, and I did not like it. I needed a way to land combos more often, and that's what abilities were for. I didn't get any though, so I needed to save up during the fight. This meant I only had 2 during the first part, but with this and my ult, I was going crazy. I got close so many times, but never there until this run happened. I don't know why, but I was ready to finish this boss. I had 0 abilities ready. I got 2 during the phase, but that's it. My dodging and combos were on point. Get me the win. This left me with 1 phase left before this challenge was finally over. And this one was hard, but still easier than whatever this was. It was the same as before, with just a larger battlefield. Everything was going well until this appeared a little over halfway through the fight. Now look, coming in for a combo was impossible here. You'll get hit doing it, so I needed to save a lot. I mean my abilities though. I needed all 4 of them and my ult if I wanted any help with doing this. I switched out some abilities though, and found out these 2 dealt a lot more than their counterparts. And all that was left was to practice. In this run, after using everything I had, he had a sliver of HP left. I knew I could still get hit after I rushed up. So after thinking for a second, I realized that the only option, aside from rushing up, would be worse. So I went in, and here I got the win, putting an end to this horrible challenge. And that's it. I was ecstatic too. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, check out this one where I beat Miles Morales without taking damage.